Front Row Motorsports keeps making announcements, plus the Clash has a new sponsor and a brand new Xfinity Series team was just introduced. How's it going, y'all? My name is Eric. Welcome to Out of the Groove. 2025 is off to a fast start. Breaking news this morning out of Front Row Motorsports. We'll get to that in just a moment. First, the Clash at Bowman Gray has a title sponsor. Cookout will sponsor the season opening exhibition event. Nice looking logo, fitting partnership. I Googled it to be sure. Cookout was founded in Greensboro, North Carolina, not far from Winston-Salem, where Bowman Gray Stadium is located. NASCAR is really leaning into the North Carolina grassroots feel of this event. I've said it before, I'll say it again. NASCAR this year has somehow created the exact same track they built in Los Angeles, but they've given it a completely different feel. The LA Memorial Coliseum, urban, young, something like 70% of ticket buyers were experiencing their first NASCAR race. Sunny, warm weather, hip-hop, Wiz Khalifa, pop, Pitbull, Olympics versus Bowman Gray Stadium. Grassroots, old school, probably 0% of ticket buyers experiencing their first NASCAR race. Cold, country. They've got a mechanic who's a modified champion racing for Rick Ware Racing. Forget In-N-Out Burger, Cookout is sponsoring the event. These are both quarter-mile short tracks. In fact, NASCAR is using the exact same safer barrier walls they brought to LA for the Bowman Gray Stadium race. It's the same track, it's the same physical race, but it feels like a completely different event. I appreciate that. Look, I'm all about trying to reach new audiences, but the more I look at the Bowman Gray Clash, I appreciate NASCAR not trying to force Los Angeles into Winston-Salem. Yes, it's basically the same quarter-mile short track, but the vibe, the event, feels completely different. Well done. We'll talk about a brand new Xfinity Series team in a few moments, but I've kept y'all waiting long enough. Let's talk Front Row Motorsports. This morning, Front Row Motorsports confirmed they have signed driver Zane Smith to a multi-year deal. He will drive the number 38 Ford, it appears. Ryan Burgundy, who was Todd Gilliland's crew chief on the number 38 last year, will stay on the 38 to work with Zane Smith. It's a little odd to me that if the team was always planning on keeping the 38 branding, why not leave Todd Gilliland in the 38? He and Ryan Burgundy worked really well together in 2024. Why not keep that relationship together? Wouldn't it make more sense to move Zane Smith to the 34? Team him up with Chris Lawson? They won a Truck Series championship together just 2 years ago. Just some quick thoughts off the top of my head. These combos seem a little strange to me, but hey, what do I know? Zane Smith spoke to reporters earlier today. Sounds like he's been anxiously following the lawsuit news all off-season. Zane said, quote, "Throughout this off-season, and I guess the first ruling, which was in Phoenix, has probably taken a solid 3 years off my life. I signed Christmas Eve, which was right after like the 5th appeal, it seemed like. After that, it was just a huge sigh of relief." I'm happy for Zane Smith. We talked about this a couple days ago, but a few years ago, Zane Smith had a Cup Series opportunity dashed when Trackhouse bought Chip Ganassi Racing. And then last year, he drew the short end of the stick when Trackhouse picked SVG over him, ending Zane's Trackhouse deal early. Zane's had to scramble a couple times in his young NASCAR career, but now it sounds like he's found a new, really an old, familiar home at Front Row. Again, Zane Smith and Front Row Motorsports won the Truck Series championship together just a couple years ago. Zane now has a year of Cup Series experience under his belt, and the second half of last season, Zane Smith was putting up Rookie of the Year numbers. Carson Hocevar won Rookie of the Year last season with an average finish of 18.3. You'll never guess what Zane Smith's average finish was the second half of last year, also 18.3. Quite the improvement after a terrible first half of the season. Zane Smith, today speaking to reporters, admitted that second half surge may have been due to him having a chip on his shoulder, knowing the Trackhouse deal was coming to an end. Zane Smith talked about the difficulties he faced the first half of last season, being new to Trackhouse and part of a new third Spire team. Zane said, quote, "When we started last year, we were part of an awkward situation. I was halfway part of one team and somewhat part of another. It just equals an awkward and weird situation, and those situations take time to learn together and grow. Unfortunately, we didn't have that time to. I mean, yeah, Zane Smith was a rookie driver paired with a rookie NASCAR crew chief, stuck in between two teams. Trackhouse had, I think, a slightly down season last year, and Spire was also hot and cold, still learning how to be competitive for the first time. It wasn't a great situation in hindsight. Here at Front Row, I think Zane Smith will fit in nicely, especially alongside Noah Gragson. They seem to be very good friends, both West Coast kids, mid-20s. I think this is a natural fit. So let's talk more broadly about Front Row Motorsports. I know their name has come up a lot lately, but I'm telling y'all, this is the team to watch. Todd Gilliland is 24 years old. Zane Smith is 25. Noah Gragson, 26. If you combine all three, I think they have 5 full seasons of Cup experience between them. For reference, I think Justin Haley has 4 full years of experience on his own. Justin Haley? So Front Row has a very young, relatively inexperienced core, but their potential collectively is through the roof. Second year as a Tier 1 Ford team, alliance with Team Penske. I remember talking to Todd Gilliland midway through last season. He told me that at the start of 2024, Front Row was, I think he put it, drowning in data. But as the year went on, they began to figure it out. Todd Gilliland took a huge step forward last year, nearly cracked the top 20 in points at the end of the season.
Majority of this stuff is all, the engineering side, crew chief side, a ton of information to go through, like just drowning in
They've got a lot on their plate
and all that stuff. Yeah, so it's still hard for sure, but our guys are working extremely hard to get through it all. And
I think we're just now starting to get to a pretty good place where everything's correlating and rolling good. And so that's going to be great for the future.
2025 is a new season. This is a new look Front Row Motorsports. We need to set reasonable goals. This team is not going to contend regularly with the Team Penske's, the Hendrick Motorsports, the Joe Gibbs Racing. This is not a championship contending team, at least not yet. A reasonable goal for Front Row Motorsports next year is to contend with that second tier. Can they beat Richard Childress Racing? Can they beat RFK? Can they beat Trackhouse? Can they contend with 2311? Or maybe a more specific goal could be, can they beat Spire? Spire Motorsports on the up and up. They took Michael McDowell and Travis Peterson this offseason. Can Front Row Motorsports stay ahead of Spire Motorsports? That's a great battle to watch, middle of the pack if you ask me. It would be awesome if Noah, Zane, or Todd could sneak into the playoffs, maybe via a super speedway or road course win, but that would be the icing on the cake. The goal for next year should be to keep pace with those other teams I just mentioned, the RFKs, Trackhouse, 2311s of the world, stay ahead of Spire, go from being a fringe playoff contending team to an actual playoff contending team that's part of the conversation come August and September. That should be the goal. I think that's realistic. This is still a very young team. Todd Gilliland, Noah Gragson, Zane Smith, not in their prime years yet. Point is, I like where Front Row Motorsports is going into next season. I think next season will be their most competitive season ever. And with this young core potentially growing and developing together, the best years of Front Row Motorsports may be yet to come. Lot to be excited about. Great to hear them officially announce Zane Smith to the 38 car full-time. Finally, let's talk about some Xfinity Series news. 1990 Daytona 500 champion Derek Cope has announced his latest venture, Cope Family Racing. Leland Honeyman Jr. and Thomas Annunziata will split time in the number 70 Chevrolet. Honeyman's first race will be the season opener at Daytona. Annunziata will make his debut at Circuit of the Americas. According to reports, they'll get cars from RCR, engines from ECR. Could be a reasonably competitive team. I met both Leland Honeyman and Thomas Annunziata for the first time last season. Annunziata in particular, great road course racer, only 19 years old, Trans Am background, ran up front with the big boys in ARCA a couple of times last year despite being in inferior equipment. Cope Family Racing did not announce full schedules for Honeyman and Annunziata next year, but I would imagine Thomas gets most of the road course races. Annunziata is an interesting one to watch. Again, only 19 years old. I actually had him on this show last summer, you may remember. Very new to NASCAR, but sounded extremely confident in my opinion. Some people may misinterpret young drivers' confidence as being slight arrogance, and I get that, but in my opinion, I think you need to have a lot of confidence to be great in professional sports. Otherwise, the first time you fail on a big stage, you may not be able to pick yourself up again. You need a little bit of ego. I want to play a short clip from my conversation with Annunziata a few months ago. Get to know one of the Xfinity Series' newest young drivers.
Well, it definitely gets you set up for this kind of stuff. The cars are 600 pounds lighter than a NASCAR, but they have, I believe, 100 to 200 less horsepower.
Yeah.
So they're just bullets, right? So they handle close to what a NASCAR would, but it's less heavy, so you're able to carry more speed into the corners, and it's more aero dependent. But other than that, there's no ABS, a little bit of power steering, but it's hot in the cars. There's no traction control. It's the same kind of stuff. So it really teaches you the discipline of driving a stock car. I also grew up racing with Connor Zillage and Brent Cruz. I started racing 7 years after they started racing, so I was always a little bit behind the 8 ball, but we didn't know what the path was, so we kind of followed them through. So they entered the Trans Am Series 2 years before I did. So last year I did my first part-time season, rookie season, and they started going to ARCA and other things, and I followed them through. But yeah, the Trans Am Series has been a huge benefit to where I am right now.
Always great to see a new race team. Hopefully they have some speed next year. Good luck to Cope Family Racing and their two talented young drivers. That's going to do it for today's episode, y'all. Thank you so much for tuning in. Leave a like if you enjoyed this video. It helps me out a ton. Also subscribe if you're new to the show, love all things NASCAR. It's the new year. Business is amping up ahead of the Clash and then the Daytona 500. Big thank you to my Patreon supporters as well. In case you missed it, a few days ago, I asked y'all to ask me any questions, racing related or otherwise. And yesterday, I answered many of those questions in a Q&A video. Hadn't done one of those in years. Thought it would be fun to cover during the off season. Be sure to check that video out if you're interested, if you missed it. I will talk to y'all again very soon. Have a great rest of your afternoon.